What up, world? This is Pastor Michael Thomas, and
Justin Jackson.
we want to welcome you today. The topic for today is thoughts on racism. I think that this could be a fantastic topic to touch on, especially coming from a biracial individual, and you are as well.
Biracial individual.
Yeah, and so growing up as a young man, I was viewed by some as not being black enough, or not being white enough. I've experienced racism from both sides of the coin, and then even people that are not of the same background as myself. You know, my dad is black, my mom is white, my wife is Mexican. I experienced racism from
that side of the family. That side of the family. I'm my ex-wife and my older kid's mother, both Hispanic. And I definitely got the racism from both sides of them families. Not in a direct manner, but maybe indirect. Maybe sometimes it was directly that I felt the type of way. But other than that, it's a big thing,
right,
when you're trying to combine families.
Yeah. When you say like not directly, do you feel like there might have been like some tension towards you because you were not of their culture? Because
you take celebrations. How we celebrate our kids. You take quinceañeras.
Right.
We might not see putting that amount into that.
Right.
And growing up, I knew about definitely knew about the Sweet 16. We have Sweet 16. You turn 16, you're kind of coming into adulthood. At that age is 15. So if I choose not to do it a certain way, or make a comment that I don't want to do it in a certain way, then you probably get that little bit of pushback.
Sure.
So you're married, right?
Right.
Correct. So how did that go? Did they have like padrinos and padrinas for your wedding?
No. So actually, when me and my wife, when we first started dating, I can remember when we had kind of like our first Christmas together. The Mexican culture, they celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve. So they wait till midnight to open up the presents or whatever. And I can remember the first Christmas Eve me and Aurora spent together. I'm hanging out at her parents' house, and her dad basically told me, "I'm never going to like you." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Because you're black."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it came straight out and said he was drunk at the time.
That's very direct.
It was very direct. It was very uncomfortable. But I'm like, trying to finesse it and make it work. You're like, hey, well, you might not like me now, but in time you'll get to know me, see I'm a good guy, and then you'll grow to love me. He said, nah.
Not gonna happen.
And then I'm like, well, maybe when me and Aurora, we could have kids and we're married.
You're gonna love the kids.
Yeah,
so
you're gonna love them.
Start to love me.
Exactly. He said, nah. And I'm like, Aurora, it's time to go.
Like, this ain't working.
Right. But you know what? Now we are 12 years removed, or more than that, and him and I have a great relationship. And I was right. He did grow to love me. What I mean? There's been times where like I didn't go to Aurora's parents' house because I'm working or doing something else. And he's like, where's my favorite son-in-law? You know what I mean? And yeah, no, he's embraced me. He's embraced our kids and her whole family. They've gotten to know me, and our relationship is tight. So it's like,
I think a lot of that comes from things that you were able to teach him along the way.
Sure.
Things that he was able to teach you along the way. And I think when growing up with a biracial family, because like my grandparents, are white, and my mother didn't talk to them for 18 years.
Yeah.
And then she decided to come back when I was probably about, I want to say maybe I was 1 and my sister was 2.
Okay.
And, they fell in love with us the minute they met us. Nothing I tell you, having a mixed baby, is a beautiful thing, or biracial of any race, because you have the mix of both of those cultures. But when my grandparents met us, they never let us go from that point on. You know, we came up every holiday. We came up in the summers, you know, and that kind of built that relationship back with my mother and her parents.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times my aunt, and I call him my favorite uncle, you know, but I did develop a better relationship with my mother's real brother later on in life, you know, because when I was running the streets down in Milwaukee, smoking cigarettes, stuff like that, I was like 14 years old. And I remember seeing him at a mall one time. And this is my blood uncle. And I saw him at Southridge Mall. And, you know, I said, hey, Uncle Jeff, you know, and he was like, you know, nephew of mine with that in your mouth, you know, and I just kind of took that, you know, as a sideways comment. It was like, well, man, forget you then, you know, and that kind of hindered our relationship. And I think a lot of that had to do with him growing up, you know, more suburban life. And then me being the way I was, you know, he just kind of couldn't trust my friends around, you know, when I come over on Christmas. If his stepkids were sneaking in the liquor cabinet, we're the ones that we put the ideal in their head, you know, and it wasn't us, you know, that's their liquor cabinet.
Right.
So, you know, we had this weird relationship for many, many years. And it wasn't until a few years ago when, you know, he reached out and was like, hey, man, you know, I just never supported you the way you thought that I should have, because I always knew you could do it.
Okay. I
always knew you could do better.
Sure.
So it's kind of that tough love.
Okay.
And me being young minded, I was like, man, this dude, my blood, and he don't care, you know. And then I had my favorite uncle who's Hispanic and from Texas and been a military man all his life. But like everything I learned, I kind of learned from him, between him and my grandfather, you know. So it was kind of just having that relationship issues within the family.
Okay.
You know, I mean, at some point, my uncle in Texas, they don't celebrate Christmas a certain type of way. Actually, they don't celebrate it at all. So my grandparents used to send their kids gifts all the time. She would always package up these big boxes and UPS them, you know, down there. Yeah. And at some point, you know, my uncle was like, don't even send them anymore. You know, and my grandfather took that a type of way. Okay. You know, so yeah, my grandfather took that kind of hard. So did my grandma, because my grandma, you know, this is something that she wants to do for her grandbabies. Right. You know, and in a way, it was like they kind of took that away from them. So that caused a lot of problems for a couple of years, you know, and then it just, so I mean, racism was strong, man, even within the family.
Cultural practices. Absolutely. And you know what's funny? You mentioned quinceañeras. I believe because I'm a man of God, a minister, it's allowed me to cross the barriers that racism puts up, because I've done 2 quinceañeras. Okay. And I mean, I'm not Hispanic, you know.
So what do you do at them as a pastor?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, it's also it's a woman's rite of passage, but at the same time, it is a religious ceremony as well. You know, both of the 2 experiences that I had, that the families called on me and asked to share some scripture, some prayers, and then basically like tell a story about their daughter in a way that painted them in a light of them maturing and growing into womanhood, you know. And I think also, but trying to encourage them to strive to be women of God and holy, holy women as well. You know what I mean? So
right.
That was pretty cool to be able to do something that's totally outside of what I've known from my cultural experiences, and be able to cross over and be a part of, you know,
a different culture,
totally different than what I know. Yeah,
be a part of something that's going on in a whole totally different culture.
For sure.
So
I got a question. So growing up, and the experiences that you might have felt, you know, maybe, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but for me, I dealt with racism where, you know, like I said before, I wasn't good enough for the black side. I wasn't good enough for the white side. And it made me feel a certain type of way about myself. Like part of me hated myself for being mixed. I wish I was all black, or I wish I was all white. I would have been happy with either one. That way I wouldn't have been attacked for who I was. You know what I mean?
Right.
Did you feel a certain type of way about yourself that made you, I
think for a while there I did. And it probably wasn't until I started, you know, kind of embracing the gang activity
Okay.
and I created that family,
Sure.
you know, because then that kind of took me out of the picture of both.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I had my own crew, my own
Mm.
family, you know, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, this is what I had for family.
Right.
You know, outside of my siblings,
Okay.
you know, because we were always close when we were younger. But yeah, I felt that way because I have a brother who always got to go to deer camp
Okay.
because they all hunted. So this has been going on in the family. My grandfather, you know, to my uncles and their brothers and everything, you know. And honestly, it's a lot of the white side of my family that I didn't know until these last few years.
Mhm.
Like I walked into a Fox Valley Technical college institution in Watoma, and I was talking to my aunt and my cousin and didn't even know it,
Sure.
you know, until I mentioned who my grandmother was. Like my grandmother's Gladys Wickard. And
Wow.
they're like, Gladys Wickard, that's my husband's sister-in-law, you know. And I'm like, oh, you my aunt, you know, Aunt Dolores. I was like, ain't that crazy, you know? Here they've been working here for years, and here I am trying to go back to school, and I'm meeting this side of the family. And my brother knew all of them because he's always been going to deer camp. Now,
Sure.
granted, you know, I was a felon since I was 17 years old, so I wasn't able to hunt and carry guns and stuff like that. So my brother was able to. And I think that's kind of where, you know, and I didn't see my black side of my family because they were all in Kansas,
Mhm.
you know, and Michigan. So, but not that they weren't there or wouldn't embrace me. I
Yeah.
just didn't have the means you know, honestly, I just didn't think about going down there at the time.
Mhm.
So I think that, you know, my mom felt the type of way about that side of the family at one point after my dad left. And there was some hostility there between them, you know, but like I always tell my kids, you know, what goes on between adults, you know, is between the adults. It
Okay.
shouldn't trickle over and affect them,
For sure.
you know, in a way. I guess at times, you know, I was like, well, where do I fit in?
Mhm.
Like, where do I really fit in? You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
go to the suburbs, and they worried about me stealing or you know, treat me a type of way. But one thing I can say is I always did feel like I was more connected with the black community
Sure.
than any other community.
I
You
can
know?
understand how you feel, and you know what I think. There's also, as much as there might be some amongst the black community that might reject you,
Mhm.
there's also some that look at you and see you as one of theirs and embrace you and love on
Right.
you. Whereas I don't think I've ever been a part of the white community and they were like, "Oh yeah, you're one of us." You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
Not that they would like address it, like some people would
Right,
address that, but
right.
they would say like, "Well, we don't see color and we look past that, and it's all about that person
I think it's
and their
kind of
heart."
in the
You
way
know?
you talk. You
Mhm.
know, if you don't talk, if you don't articulate in a certain type of way, they're not going to embrace you.
Sure.
You know, because right away in my opinion, it's a show of ignorance.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't know how to articulate or the way you use slang and stuff like that.
Sure.
You know, so when you start having these conversations, there's one or two ways that it goes. Either they're intrigued with what you're saying because they're always like, I love the way you talk. You know, it's like, well, how do I talk? You
Yeah.
know, but then it's also, you know, sometimes you get that, well, let me do the talking.
Mhm.
You know, and I had, like I said, you know, I had my brother, you know, Koki, say that one time, and I think I said that on one of the podcasts. You know, when I wanted to start doing the public speaking and a positivity booth and start talking to all these people in the community here in Sheboygan, before I even moved down here, one of his sentences was, "Well, you should let me do the talking when we go to business meetings."
Okay.
Because I talk slang in the way that I talk, you know.
Sure.
So that kind of made me feel a type of way. I was like, man, what are you
Mhm.
talking about? I was like, dude, I've been doing business a lot longer, you know. I was like, so
Yeah.
I know how to deal with people,
Right.
you know, no matter how I say it,
Yeah.
you know. So
I mean, no, that's a great point. And I think, you know what, it's not only how you talk, but I mean, sometimes it's how we dress. We can
mhm.
get labeled or
Yeah.
stereotyped amongst other people in the community. I mean, a lot of people look at me and like, "Oh, he's a pastor."
And they see your Jordans, they see the way
Right.
you dress, and they like,
Yeah,
what kind of pastor is this, you know?
exactly.
And it's not all about suits.
Right.
That's the biggest thing I can say. I like to wear suits, you know, when I can, but it's not
Yeah.
always about suits.
No
You
doubt
know,
about it. I
it's
mean,
about comfortability. You know what you're comfortable with,
absolutely.
being
And I mean,
yourself.
you can't judge a book by its cover. You know what I mean? And
Amen.
our skin tone falls right in line with that.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
You ever thought that you had to fight double time or that much more because of being biracial?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, You know, it was a rough neighborhood,
Hmm.
and I didn't have my mom around like most other kids. My mom got pregnant as a teenager. She was
Hmm.
still in high school, and her and my dad got married, but they got a divorce, and she still hadn't even graduated yet. She didn't want to be homeless with a child, so she gave custody to my dad, and so we lived in the hood,
Hmm.
and kids would walk by all the time and call me white boy and cracker or honky, and then, but not only that, so like my
You ever
my
get the yellow boy?
yellow boy, I
Yellow.
heard yellow boy, yeah, I've heard that too.
Yellow.
I heard a whole lot of stuff, but yeah, and so no, I mean at a young age, at like 7, I had already knew that I hated racism. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I was not going to allow somebody to tell me who I could love and who I can be with based upon what their skin looked like. And
Hmm.
in fact, like I went around the neighborhood and started fighting. Like I got tired of being bullied, so I became a bully, and I was
Right.
like starting fights just to let people know like I'm not the one to play with. You
Right
know
out
what
the
I mean?
gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it made me definitely have to fight. And then even as a grown adult, you know what I mean? Like I'm in a totally different mindset. But like when I was in small towns or the suburbs, like there'd be people that would throw bottles at me and just
Hmm.
try to start fights. And I never even said anything or did anything to them, but they would approach me and they'd be like, "Oh, what's up with your shirt?" I'm like, "What?"
Well,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
and I
Like
think
people just
growing up
want
in the hood, it's kind of like if you're not dark enough, you can't squab. You can't. You don't have the same. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, you're not as tough
to make
as
that
the rest of
assumption.
the brothers in the hood.
Sure.
You know, so I think I had to fight a lot. You know, and
Yeah.
like you said, prove a
Prove
point to
yourself.
prove a
Yeah.
point. Like, yo, and I think it wasn't until I was in late in my teens, actually maybe early 20s, that I realized that a lot of the white boys that I associated myself with
Mhm.
were the ones that weren't running on me. So when we're getting in squabs and stuff like this, I had a handful of them that they're sticking with me all the way through.
Right.
But I also had a couple of the brothers I knew from the hood,
Hmm.
first ones to be gone, you
Right.
know, or hey, I'm busy. I got stuff to do, you know, and it's like when you make that phone call, you know, when you may need help, no matter what it is, you realize who's really there.
Sure.
And that don't have a skin tone on it.
Absolutely.
You know, that definitely don't have a color on it. You know, there's no
Right.
color on loyalty.
Hmm.
You know, so I think that was the biggest thing for me, you know, as I grew older.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are, your skin tone, it just doesn't matter, you know, who you are. As long as you loyal
Right.
and you rock with me,
Hmm.
I'm rocking with you.
For sure.
You know, I support you. I'm gonna help you.
No doubt
You know?
about it. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, when you go through things like that, so like you think about it, um, you not every people have experienced racism, but to experience it from your own people
Yeah.
is twice as difficult. You know what I mean? And
It's
you know,
heartbreaking.
it is
It's
heartbreaking.
heartbreaking.
You know,
You supposed to love me.
right, right. I'm one of you. I'm getting to treat the same hatred you receive. I received that as well, but now I'm getting it from people that you would think that'd be right there in the gutter with you. You know what I'm saying? We
Right.
both in the gutter. So why you mad at me? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
yeah, no. It's definitely heartbreaking, but you know what? I mean, folks can't dwell on that. You got to keep on living
You
because
gotta
you
keep
can't make
stepping.
everybody happy.
Yeah.
And so that leads to my next question. You've got biracial kids, and now they've
Hmm.
got a threefold with black, white, Hispanic,
Yep.
same as mine. What do you instill in your kids? Like, how do they view themselves, and how are you able to help prevent them to have the feelings that maybe you might have felt as a young
I
person?
think I really, you know, like I have two older children. So Silas, you know, my oldest son, he's 21, and he identifies, you know, as Hispanic and white, or
Hmm.
black, white, black, Hispanic. But I noticed with him, he kind of moves more towards, you know, the white crowd.
Okay.
Articulates very well. My daughter, she's darker, his sister, so she's
Hmm.
a lot darker. You know, she
Sure.
has a lot more minority friends. You know, or women of color. Went to UW Green Bay cheerlead. You know, but she also has um, leaning towards the white crowd, you know, but she's dark. And then I have my two younger ones, which I think we'll have that conversation later as they grow up, you know, because it's like the old saying, you know, I mean, kids don't know any of that. Right. Racism is taught. You know, you teach them this. You know, if you're you know, we don't listen to that kind of music, you know, then they're gonna grow up thinking that only Mexicans listen to this music, or thinking only blacks listen to this music. So it's taught. Sure. You know, because any kid, you throw them in a playground, they finna run up and just had the best, they living their best life. Right. They just loving the playground. They out here having a ball, you know. It was funny because I had my daughter, you know, she's 3, and we were at the park a couple weeks ago, and there was this Hmong kid, you know, and it caught me off guard because, you know, she says, "What's his name?" You know, and right away the guy I don't think he would think I would understand the name. Sure. So he said, "It's Daniel." So my daughter was like, "Daniel," you know, and they just get to playing, they throwing the frisbee, and it's funny because she's 3 and he had to been like 4, but she's looking at him like the little kid. So she's like, because it was a communication barrier, but she's like, "Here you go," you know, kind of chucking them the frisbee, and I'm like, man, this is just, you know, I got it on film, and I'm like, this is a beautiful thing. Sure. Because they don't understand that, but there's going to come a point where, you know, my son, he says prayers in Spanish, but he also makes it very clear, you know. I say, "Rice, what are you?" He's like, "I'm black," you know, but then you catch him at a different time, you know, and he's like, "I'm Mexican," you know, and then, but he never said he's white, you know, because he's dark, but you know, I mean, but the kids, they just trip me out with it. So it's kind of hard to explain to them until a certain situation arises. You know, I think that until they actually deal with some type of racism, they're not even going to understand what we're trying to tell them. Absolutely. You know, so I think that's kind of hard, you know, with my kids. I just try to let them know that we love them, and treat people with respect, and treat them the way you want to be treated. Shouldn't have no problems. Absolutely. You know, not that racism isn't always around us. Right. You know, I think the biggest thing for me is when it's like undercover racism. Oh man. And it's a lot of that goes around. You smile in my face and you feel a type of way about me. Absolutely. I don't get the same treatment, you know, and I can read through the words. Have you experienced that in the workforce? I experienced it in the workforce. I experienced it the first time I went to Texas. And the first time I went to Texas, I said, you know what? I said, I honestly respect and it sounds crazy. I respect the racism in the South, you know, because they're honest. Sure. I mean, they come right out. You see the signs all over. You know, you don't come in here, boy. You know, things like that. You come up here, and they're like, "Oh, well, you know, I got a couple friends, you know," and it's like, and then they act a different type of way when they're in different crowds. Sure. You know, with you, it's, "Oh, you're always welcome," you know, but you never get invited. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you always say I'm welcome, but I ain't never invited. Right. No, I've seen it. I mean, when it comes to the workforce, like I believe there's a saying, was it last to get hired, first to get fired? You know what I mean? And like I've had experiences like, man, a come and whispered jigaboo right in my ear. And then when I tried to confront them and take them to HR, they've already had a conversation with HR. They're friends with the person. Shut you down right away. And so, oh, this is he say, she say, and they got this person's back, and then I'm vilified because I'm just telling the truth. I'm just being honest. You know what I mean? This person gets to get away with what they did, and I developed a solution for that. You know, and I watched my work ethic grow. I've watched the transitions and the accomplishments that I've had within the workforce. Okay. So when I started out doing quality and stuff, you know, it was just kind of a job. It was just a thing to do. But then when I started developing skills more, you know, and I learned this from, I put you on to him a couple times with his podcast, you know, Eric Thomas. Sure. You know, like what he always says is, you're not going to outwork me. Right. I don't care about the degree. You might have a higher degree to me, right? But you're not going to outwork me. For sure. And I've taken that on in my family life, because I mean, if you're letting another man raise your kids, right, and you're capable to do so, he's outworking you. Yeah. You know, so if you just develop that mindset, like you're not going to outwork me, and with my family, right? I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna show out. You know, and in the workforce, you show up early. Right. And you leave last. For sure. You know, no matter what it is, you know, always ask, hey, what is it I can do? You know, you put that work effort in.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee you things are going to change. People are going to start to look at you and be like, nah, hey, you might have this degree, but he be putting the work in.
Right.
You know, like when I asked you to stay for 2 hours extra, you know, to help knock this out,
For sure.
y'all was the first ones to go.
Right.
You know, me, hey, let's get it done. I'm
Mhm.
here till you leave. You know, I remember one time I worked for a company, Generac, and you know, we had a deadline because it was the end of the quarter. So we got to get all these units out, you know, and millions of dollars. You know, we got to get this out.
Right.
And there were so many people that could have stayed.
Mhm.
Man, I was there from 4:30 in the morning, and we didn't leave until almost midnight.
Okay.
So the last unit was on that truck and out the door. We even bought food for the truck drivers that were coming to haul these units. You know, so we had them coming in and out. Like, look, we ordered a bunch of cheeseburgers and stuff from McDonald's. We got a bunch of Chinese food for the people that stayed. You know, so I mean, it was an awesome thing, and for me to be a part of that just built my work ethic even more.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess that's where this drive comes from with the community thing and the things that we do.
Sure.
As far as even the podcast, like,
Mhm.
you know, we trying to instill that work ethic and
Absolutely.
that drive.
Yeah, no, you know, I've experienced some different scenarios in the work field, and not all of them were had anything to do with racism, but I mean, just an individual wanting to hold me back and you know, make things difficult for me, and what I found is just being bigger than them by outworking and having integrity and just displaying class and yeah.
Well, I mean,
No,
even
it's
you
worked out in
as
my
a
favor.
pastor, like I admire you because, you know, and that's why, you know, I'm rocking with you so hard now because like this man is a pastor, a boxing coach, delivering food, doing my co-host on the podcast. You know, we got all these other programs.
Right,
Every
police
day is,
chaplain.
you know what I'm
You know
saying?
what I'm saying?
Police chaplain, like
Right.
we so many different pathways and avenues
Hmm.
that we looking at. That right there is a divine work ethic.
Sure.
You know, and that's one reason why I admire you, man, because I'm like, this dude is really trying, even though people out there try to knock you down.
Hmm.
You know, they try to say, and I think most of that comes from in itself, it might not be racism, but it's jealousy.
Sure.
You know, I'm not capable to do these things, or my doors are closed.
Right.
You know, so
So they don't have the heart to do these things.
right.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, and again, that's the undercover.
Hmm.
A lot of them don't have the confidence to come and say it.
Sure.
You know, to get out there and just say, like, I'd rather you just come tell me how you feel about me.
Right. Be a man.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
definitely want you to just come to me and be like, hey, man, this is why I don't like you. Okay,
Right.
well, sorry how you feel.
Absolutely.
How can we fix this?
Oh man.
How can we move forward?
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
hey,
No,
like,
you really preach. You preaching to
Definitely.
me now. Because no, I mean, you know, because there's a lot of people that they attempt to conduct themselves like they're genuine and they're really not. They smile in your face but hate on you behind your back, and I don't think that that's a honorable way of walking. You know, that's almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing
it
type
is.
deal.
You know, if you
what I
can't
mean?
do something, say you can't do it.
Right. who's the real you?
You know,
what I mean? Yeah.
I'm gonna give you these resources, but yet I'm never gonna call you and tell you about them. I'm never gonna shoot you an email. You know, so
right. How many times have you prevented somebody from advancing all because there's something about them that you don't like, but you've never even communicated that with them and been able to bury the hatchet, so to speak. And so, you know, I think there's too much hatred and division in the world. And man, it doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, what you've been through. We really need to embrace everyone and love on everyone, because everybody needs love.
Definitely.
Everybody needs to feel accepted, because if you have been rejected, then it can be a natural inclination to make others feel that same feeling of rejection that you felt. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And so we want to be a source of healing, a source of education,
source of community.
Absolutely.
You know,
and we want to continue to give y'all real conversations and real chat. And man, I think it's really been a pleasure to be able to talk to you about this subject.
Always.
And I hope that, you know, people can understand from our perspective, because being
Right.
biracial is almost a whole nother race in
Correct.
itself.
It
you know,
is, and there's more and more that are out there.
Right.
We're not the only ones, and I hope this can reach somebody out there, so they can sit back and really think about their life, what's going on in their life, the people that are supposed to love them, the people that don't, and how you move forward from it.
For sure.
So we appreciate you for tuning in.
Yes.
Another episode of the Real Chat Podcast.
All right. Thank you so much. And we out.
Have a good week.